All right, deep divers, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive into the abyss.
Last time we uncovered that strange connection between Q and Diddy, it left us with a lot more questions than answers. One of the biggest ones you might remember is from Q Drop 2608. What was in the white envelopes?
Huh. That's exactly what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at footage from George H.W. Bush's funeral back in December of 2018, a public event, tons of major political figures were there, and something really bizarre happened.
Okay, before we get into the theories and all that, let's roll the footage so you can see for yourself. Keep your eyes peeled, deep divers. Every little detail can be a clue.
Yeah, pay attention to those who are given the envelopes. Their reactions are like a silent movie playing out right in front of us. Shock, confusion, fear.
Okay, let's pause it right there. that's something else.
What jumps out at you? Those reactions are anything but subtle.
It's just the raw emotion on display, isn't it? Jeb Bush looks like he's seen a ghost. Laura Bush, you can practically feel the anger coming off of her. And George W., he's trying so hard to keep it together, but you can tell he's tense. It's like they were handed something terrifying, something that really shook them.
And it's not just them. Look at the Clintons, the Obamas, even Karen Pence. This sense of unease just ripples through the whole crowd.
It's like watching a performance almost too perfect for a moment like this.
Exactly. Makes you wonder, was this intentional? Was this a message? But if it was, who was it for and what did it mean?
Okay, so we've got these white envelopes being handed out at a former president's funeral. And some of the most powerful people in the world are visibly shaken by them.
And remember, this isn't just any funeral. We're talking about the National Cathedral. Security there is incredibly tight, especially for an event this huge.
Which begs the question, how do these envelopes even get in there? Who is behind all of this? It would have to be someone who knew the venue inside and out, someone who understood all the security protocols, someone with a way to slip these envelopes to certain people.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest mysteries here. The whole thing is just baffling.
Now let's add another layer to this whole puzzle. Donald Trump was there at the funeral, but he left early.
It's interesting that you bring up Trump, because this is where Q Drop 2608 comes back into play. Remember, Q's online presence really took off right after Trump took office in early 2017.
So are you saying Trump is Q? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, it's a theory that's out there, and it's definitely interesting. Trump was famous for not playing by the rules, for shaking things up. Could this have been a power move orchestrated by him, using Q as his mouthpiece?
That's a pretty bold claim. Are there any connections besides the timing?
I mean, we're dealing with speculation here. We don't have any hard proof. But the timing, plus the fact that Trump was there and then suddenly left, it's definitely suspicious. It's a piece of the puzzle that's worth looking into.
Okay, so we've got the envelopes, we've got the reactions, we've got this incredibly secure location. And then we've got Trump, whose rise to power coincides with Q's emergence. This is starting to feel like a spy thriller. What do you think, deep divers?
It's a lot to take in, isn't it? We've got the event, the reactions, the logistics of it all, and the possible Trump-Q connection.
But the big question remains, what was in those envelopes? What could possibly cause such a strong reaction from these people? And what does it tell us about who really holds the power?
All right, deep divers, welcome back. We left off with a whole lot of questions about those white envelopes. So how about we try and make some sense of this whole thing?
Sounds good to me. We've got a former president's funeral, high-profile guests acting like they've seen a ghost, and possible connections to both Trump and Q. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. So let's go back to those reactions for a second. They're our biggest clue here. Remember, this isn't just surprise. We're seeing fear, anger, maybe even recognition in their faces.
Yeah, like they knew what was in those envelopes, and it was bad news.
Exactly. What could possibly cause that kind of reaction? Think about it, deep divers. What kind of information could shake people like the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, like that? We're talking about some of the most powerful people in the world.
It would have to be something huge, right? Something that could completely destroy their reputations, their legacies.
Exactly. Some theories out there suggest that the envelopes contained evidence related to Jeffrey Epstein. His arrest, you might remember, happened just a few months after this funeral.
That would explain the fear and the anger, for sure. Epstein had ties to a lot of powerful people.
And the timing is definitely interesting. Just imagine if those envelopes held proof of their involvement with him, maybe even photographs. That would be a massive scandal.
It would, but wouldn't something like that have come out by now? Wouldn't someone have leaked it or talked to the press?
Not necessarily. You have to think about the power dynamics here. These people are used to operating behind the scenes, keeping their secrets buried. They have the resources and the motivation to make sure nothing gets out.
Okay, so maybe it was Epstein related, but what about those people who didn't seem to get an envelope? Like President Carter, for example. Was he left out on purpose?
That's a great question, and it seems to suggest that this wasn't some random attack on everyone there. Certain individuals were targeted, and we can only guess why.
So let's say for a second that these envelopes did contain some kind of bombshell. Who benefits from that kind of public display of power?
Now, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If it was Trump, like some people think, was this his way of showing everyone who's boss? Was it a way of saying, I'm not afraid to play dirty?
Or maybe it wasn't about him at all. Maybe it was Q or someone connected to Q sending a message. Maybe a warning or even a threat.
That's where things get really interesting. Remember that Q drop 2608 mentioned a counter operation. Could these envelopes have been the first move in some bigger game?
A game with insanely high stakes, where the players are some of the most powerful people in the world, and the secrets involved could bring down our whole society. It sounds almost too crazy to be true.
I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but the more we dig into this, the more it feels like truth is stranger than fiction.
Okay, but let's take a step back here. Let's say this wasn't about Epstein or some huge conspiracy. What if it was something more personal? Something tied to George H.W. Bush's past?
That's an interesting angle. Remember, Bush had a long career in politics, and he was involved in some pretty controversial stuff.
Right, like his time as CIA director and those rumors about his involvement in certain incidents. And let's not forget about the savings and loan scandal. Lots of people close to Bush were caught up in that.
So could this whole envelope affair have been a way of exposing Bush's past actions? Maybe an act of revenge or a warning to those who thought they were above the law?
It's definitely possible. We're talking about a man who lived in a world of secrets, a world of loyalty and betrayal.
Exactly. And if those envelopes contained evidence of his wrongdoings, it would make sense why everyone was so scared, so angry, why they were so desperate to keep their cool.
Deep divers. This is starting to look like a mystery that goes way beyond a few white envelopes. This is about power secrets and the extreme lengths people will go to in order to protect them.
Welcome back, deep divers, to the abyss. We've really been going deep, haven't we?
We have. It feels like the more we learn about this envelope affair, the less we actually know.
That's how it goes sometimes, isn't it? The deeper we dive, the more twists and turns we find.
So let's try to recap what we've talked about so far. We've got these white envelopes showing up at a super high security event, and some of the most powerful people in the world are visibly shaken by them.
And those reactions are really something. Fear, anger, recognition, like they already knew it was coming. And it wasn't good.
We've talked about the possibility that the envelopes contained evidence related to Jeffrey Epstein, which would make this a really huge deal. We've also considered the idea that this was a power move by Trump, maybe using Q to intimidate or control these people.
And we haven't ruled out the possibility that this is connected to George H.W. Bush's past. Maybe those envelopes held secrets from his long and controversial career.
So where does that leave us? What can we say for sure after all of this?
Well, I think it's safe to say that something very strange happened that day at the National Cathedral. Whether it was a warning, a threat, or just a move in some bigger game, it definitely had an impact.
It's like someone was shining a light on a dark secret. A secret about power and who really has it.
And the fact that it happened so publicly at a former president's funeral, it just adds to the mystery.
It's like a message was being sent, not just to the people who got the envelopes, but to everyone watching. It was a message that said, we know your secrets and we aren't afraid to use them.
It's pretty disturbing when you think about it. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about how the world works.
And it makes you wonder if there are things going on behind the scenes that we don't even know about.
Exactly. And that's what diving into the abyss is all about, isn't it? It's about questioning everything, exploring the unknown, challenging the stories we're told.
Deep divers, as we wrap up this episode, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this whole thing? What do you think those envelopes contained? What was the motivation behind this? Who do you think was involved?
Share your theories, your insights, your questions in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations into the unknown. We'll be back soon with another plunge into the abyss. Until then, keep questioning, keep searching, and keep diving deeper